Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's good to see you this morning. This morning, we welcome you in the name of all that is good and holy and sacred, all that means the most to you. And we greet you in the warm and loving spirit of this ministry, Unity Spiritual Center. And thank you for joining us today. You know, a place has been prepared for each one of us here. Thank you for making your appointment with us. Let's begin with prayer. As we get centered in and feel our support of our chair, we invite in loving spirit. Today I am open. I am open. All that is prepared for me in my whole life begins today anew. And today I invite in forgiveness. Forgiveness of myself, where I may have missed the mark and where I have felt wronged. Today I'm ready to let go totally or begin with that small amount of willingness to release any resentment or anger or upset of something that happened in the past, because today I choose to be happy and content. With the Buddhist prayer, may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free. If anyone has hurt me or harmed me knowingly or unknowingly, in thought, word, or deed, I forgive them freely. And I also ask forgiveness if I have hurt or harmed anyone, knowingly or unknowingly, in thought, word, or deed. So yes, may I be happy, and may my friends be happy, and may they be peaceful, and may they be free. And the big one, may my enemies be happy, and peaceful, and free. And we invite in all the creatures and the critters of the earth. May all creatures be happy. May all creatures be peaceful and free. And so we bring that along with us forevermore. Amen. Let's join together with our mission statement, which is, together now, we are a spirit-centered community, living love and uplifting lives. We have more to say about that in announcements. This morning's daily word is on joy. I am God's joy. What else could I be? As the Apostle Paul declared to his followers, yes, you are our glory and joy. So I pause to remember relationships that have brought me joy, and I bless everyone who has shared those relationships with me. Oh, today I breathe in the treasure of the good feeling that arises when people I care about let me know that I have brought joy into their lives. Because sharing joy is an important part of the human experience, and it has the potential to bring us together. As I grow in spiritual awareness through prayer, God's joy permeates my consciousness. Let's just feel that. When we declare that joy permeates my consciousness and every area of my life, I make a commitment to expressing that joy, and I become an ever clearer expression of God's perfect idea. Love that. We just were in prayer, and you know what that feels like when you go into that place. And if you have a prayer in your heart that you would like someone to pray with you, you can do that by filling out a prayer request in the seat back in front of you and leaving it in the prayer basket in the back. Or call Silent Unity, where for 24 hours a day for over 125 years, people who believe in the power of prayer have been present for us. And they want you to call. That's why they're there. And it's a joy to express joy with them or a prayer request with them and feel ever more supported. This morning, do we have musicians this morning? Vocals, Mark Sauce. We're always glad when Mark sings for us. Julie, of course, who leads the song team. Patsy Cameron on piano. Randy Clark on bass. Thank you, Randy, for being with us today. Drums, Dagan Williams, as always, faithful Dagan. And in the sound booth, Jim Sullenberger on the sound, Brian on PowerPoint, and who's doing video?
Yeah, I'm doing 2 hats.
He's learned to be in 2 places at one time. That's pretty advanced spirituality, Mark. So let's have our congregational song, and then we'll greet each other.
Please stand. Join us in singing Right Where I Belong. Here we go. Look at this glorious morning. Why ask for anything more? I follow where my heart leads.
Walk through this open door. I've always been a seeker, felt I was alone. Now in this room full of smiling faces, I know I found my home. This is where joy lives, this is where love is, this is a place where I am strong. This is where eyes meet, where kindred's hearts beat. I am right where I belong.
Here in this space I'm accepted.
I'm welcome just as I am.
I'm ready to be inspired, to reach out a helping hand. This is a new beginning. I trust in the mystery. Now that my heart is open, there's no place I'd rather be. This is where joy is, this is where love is, this is a
not so much. Shalom, the other person says, Melekum Shalom. So it means like, meetings, everything's good. Say happy.
A song of praise is a good way. It's a very good way. A song of praise is a good way to start your day. A song of praise is a good way. It's a very good way. A song of praise
Is a good way to start your day.
Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. A song of praise is a good way. It's a very good way. A song of praise
is a good way to start your day. A song of praise is a good way. It's a very good way. A song of praise is a good way to start your day.
Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Okay, is that one of those songs that you hear yourself singing as you're driving and brushing your teeth? And I love that song, boy, but it's grabbed a hold of me. We have some announcements this morning. Lots going on for a relatively small church. Hope you'll join us. Today is the annual meeting. Please stay. We really need your input as we move into a new chapter of community service, which Reverend Steve will talk to us about. And we're going to review the past year, talk about what the budget was, introduce the new board. And so right after service, grab coffee and something to nibble on right here and have a seat, and we're going to start the Think Tank Revival. Let's hear it for the Think Tank Revival. So we're going to have brainstorming as to what our new chapter will be in community service, a new story for us. And then we're going to break into groups, decide which projects we're going to take, maybe one or two, and we'll have you out of here by 2. In lieu of the normal potluck, that's why we're having you have some treats in the back. Roy?
Just to say, the goodies for people staying for the annual meeting are at the back of the room, so you don't even have to go over.
Yeah, it's all set up back there, and coffee will be right there, too.
So there's treats in the other room if you're not staying, right?
Not many. No. Right here. Thank you for your kindness, Julie. The Fat Follies Variety Show celebrates Mardi Gras the Unity Way. This delightful family-friendly program features music and comedy to chase away the winter blues. Tickets are on sale for $15 and $25 at the door, $25 for 2 people or a single family.
I got some more to say about that.
Okay, then.
Mind.
No.
It is February 28th, the last Friday of February, and I have tickets this week for sale.
Yay.
So see me afterwards real quick if you want a ticket, and I'll sell you one or 5 or more.
She's going to meet you in here, not in the fellowship hall with the cookies. Our instincts are habitual, yet they are
Sunday on the board. Oh, sorry, it's Friday.
Thank you, Todd. Our instincts are habitual, aren't they? Yet they're also the most unconscious parts of ourselves. So join certified Enneagram teacher Kathleen Tomich to learn how your personality type fixations distort the instinct and go deeper into the power of the Enneagram. You can sign up in the hallway. The workshop is offered in the afternoon and evenings, so pick a time that you like best. And there is a charge, $45 or $5 a session. As a reminder, there will be no Qigong group on Friday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. That's the day that you have a free day to take somebody out to dinner or cook them a meal or... Well, my Valentine's right there, so... Also, don't forget to join the Women in Unity next Sunday for food and fellowship. Bring a salad topping to share for the community salad. It will be in Fellowship Hall. And there'll be a Reiki circle next Sunday in here, if you'd like to learn about Reiki. And for more details, please see your bulletin. This is a time in our service where we welcome anyone who might be here for the very first time. If you are here for the first time and you're willing to raise your hand, please do so. And our greeters have a packet for you. Oh, I don't see anybody. No newcomers? Okay.
I'm here for the first time today.
Oh. And you probably need more information, Gary. Okay. If you're new and you're streaming, we welcome you. We want you to know that we're grateful that you're with us, and please join us again. Okay, let's take all that in and center ourselves and prepare for meditation.
Just know that please join us in singing.
You are love, you are strength, you are forgiveness, you are love, and I can see you as you are.
Just take that in and know that for yourself. I am love. I am love. I am strength. I am forgiveness. I am love. And I can see me as I am. And now we know it together as a community. We are love. We are love. We are strength. We are forgiveness. We are love. And I can see us as we are.
And now I invite you, if you would, just to close your eyes and just relax and just begin that incredible journey inward into the feeling of love. We allow our hearts to open. We feel safe and secure in this moment. There is only love here for us. And so we fully open our consciousness to the experience of the dynamic of the feeling that love is who we are. and love is what we have come here to give. And we recognize that that shows up in so many ways in our life. It is the reaching of a hand to a stranger in welcome and appreciation. It is a kind word when someone may be down. It is the intention of connecting with those we are involved with in deeper ways. It is putting the attention on someone else rather than on ourselves, with the intention of bringing forth the good in them. It is the willingness to see the good in everyone and in everything, and to intentionally call it forth into expression, so that we might experience the goodness that is in our world. It is our efforts to have conversations about the subject of love. It is the willingness to say, I love you, and mean it, and feel it. It is the gift that God has given us in consciousness to overcome the challenges that exist in our life, the struggles, the heartbreaks, the dynamics that show up that oftentimes make us feel less than. And then when we realize that we are love, that the world is a good place, and that when we engage in the world in that consciousness that good things will happen, opportunities will present themselves, divine ideas will show up, people will show up in our life to guide us, to help us, to support us, to lead us, to direct us, to nurture us, to love us. And so we live in this consciousness of love every moment of every day. And we recognize that it brings unity into our life. Not just unity in the sense of unity, spiritual center, but unity in the sense of connecting. And that unity is our purpose. For we are not alone on this planet. We do not seek to isolate ourselves from others because of fear. We seek to engage in life, to be an instrument of the Holy Spirit, to lead people in ways that Spirit directs us to do so. We see our life unfolding with a sense of abundance. That when we live in love, we are abundant. And we don't count the shekels in our bank or the size of our home or the type of car we drive, but rather the fullness of our heart. Because when our heart's full, these other things will take care of themselves. As Jesus said, love your enemies. Do good to those who persecute you. See the good in them and call it forth into expression. And know that as we do so, we literally change the world. We change our life. We change the reality in which we live. And we live with a peaceful and loving heart. And so let us take this divine idea of love and joy and peace and just hold it in our hearts as we rest for just a moment in the silence of our being. love speaks to all of us, to our hearts. And so out of this love comes joy and peace and hope. Out of love comes our dreams, our visions, our desires. And out of love comes our accomplishments and all the good that we are able to bring into this life. And so for this understanding and this awareness and this knowing, we truly give thanks in the name and through the power of the living Spirit of love within us all. And so it is. Amen.
Into God's presence,
Into God's presence,
would I enter now?
would I enter now?
I am surrounded
I am surrounded
by the love of God.
by the love of God.
Let me be still
Let me be still
and listen to the truth.
and listen to the truth.
Let every voice
Let every voice
but God's be still in me.
but God's be still in me. Let me remember I am one with God. Peace to my brother who is one with me. Let me remember what my purpose is. Let all the world be blessed with peace through me. There is one light, and that I share with God. I am sustained by the love of God. All that I give is given to myself. Let every voice but God's be still in me. Let me remember there is no will but God's. God's peace is with me forever. I am saved. Let me remember there is no
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah. Before I get into my lesson today, I have some unfinished business to take care of. And so Kelly and Jackie, would you come forward? I got to tell you, Kelly took me skiing yesterday, and we have some unfinished business. He says, we're skiing. When one other fellow went with us, we're skiing, and he said, I'm going to take you over to this run that you haven't been on. And don't worry, it's fine. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. So we're going up the lift, and the hill is like this, And then he took us over this area, way over on the other side, and we're going down, and we're tired, and he says, well, where would he get to the bottom? And he said, well, I forgot to tell you, this is the longest run on the hill. It's about 3 miles long. So.
Forgiveness, right?
Yes. So Kelly and Jackie are new members of our church today, and we want to honor that and to welcome them. And I want to give you this membership certificate, and you have the right to vote. Membership really is an outer statement of an inner commitment of your spiritual journey and where you feel at home and you want to be a part of this ministry, and we're so happy that you have chosen to be so. And so let's bless Kelly and Jackie with our unity blessing. We love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the Christ light shining in you. Together, we love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the Christ light shining in you. Welcome. Thank you. Now we're even. So there's this elderly Jewish gentleman who became ill, and he went to the hospital, and it happened to be a Catholic hospital, and he's sitting there, and the nun comes in for the to be admitted to the hospital. So she has some questions, so she sits down and said, well, okay, so you're sick and you need to be admitted to the hospital. I just want to know who's going to pay for your stay here. And he says, I don't have any money. And she says, well, do you have a relative or somebody that could take responsibility? And he goes, well, the only person I have is my sister, and she joined the Catholic Church, and she became a nun, and now she's an old maid, and she doesn't have any money. And the nun said, well, wait a minute. She says, we're not old maids. She said, we are married to Jesus Christ. And he thinks for a moment, and he says, well, in that case, send the bill to my brother-in-law. Debt is kind of the topic I'm speaking today, and debt is an interesting issue because in our culture it is so easy to carry debt that our culture is based on it, literally based on it. That we get credit card offers in the mail practically every day. Nobody that I know of doesn't get those offers that show up all the time, and so it's just so easy. You go to the store, they want you to pay with a credit card because you'll buy more. The studies show that if you make your purchases with a credit card, you will buy more and spend more money. And so the whole thing just adds up that we tend to create more and more debt, and our culture encourages it and supports us in that, and because of the easy credit. We also have get out of debt seminars that show up to help us get out of debt. And so we have one side that's saying get in debt, and the other side saying this is how you get out of debt. And most of the seminars are usually fairly basic and simple. It's like, earn more than you spend and pay down your debts. I mean, that's kind of right? It's not really complicated to get out of debt, but there are some ways of doing that. Another thing is to increase your income, and so they have all those kinds of dynamics as well. And many times we just get to a point where we just throw our hands up and say, God help. This is difficult to walk this line and deal with this challenge, this never ceasing experience. And so but I think monetary debt which is more of an outer symbol of what's really going on internally with many of us and with our life experience, because everything happens out of our own inner consciousness. Everything occurs out of our own thoughts and feelings and decisions and experiences that we have. And so it's really about our consciousness. And I don't say that in the context of a guilt trip. What I'm saying that is in the context of being aware of how these things are created in our life experience. And so if we are able to look at and acknowledge the spiritual dynamics that are unfolding in our life experience and bring them into play in a conscious way, then we give ourselves the courage and the strength and the ability to deal with our life effectively and lovingly and clearly, and not have to carry a load with us down our path. Our parable today comes from Luke, the 7th chapter, verse 40 through 45. And it's a very interesting parable because it's a parable of the debtors. And what it says is, and I'm going to read the passage that leads up to it, which begins at verse 36. It says, one of the Pharisees asked him to eat, that's Jesus, asked him to eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house, and he took his place at the table. And behold, a woman of the city, who was a sinner, when she learned that he was at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw it, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this who is touching him is, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he answered, what is it, teacher? And he said, a certain creditor had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he forgave them both. Now, which one of them will love him more? Simon answered, the one, I suppose, to whom he forgave more. And he said to him, you have judged rightly. Then turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house, and you gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me a kiss, but from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven. For she loved much, but he who is forgiven little loves little. And he said to her, your sins are forgiven. Then those who were at the table with him began to say among themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? And he said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Now, there's some interesting dynamics that exist around there. First, how can the woman just walk into a dinner and show up and, out of nowhere? So there's lots of different questions that kind of show up. But really what it's about is about debt, and how debt is often an impediment to our freedom. And what is it about inner debt? How might that affect our inner freedom? Because that's really what we're looking for, is that feeling of freedom that we have. And every thought is about the inner debt, how it affects us and gets in the way of our alignment with principle. Now, the outer debt that we have certainly chokes us with interest that we have to pay, but the inner debt chokes off our energy, chokes off our life force that we are carrying with us. That's the interest that we have to pay when we carry an inner debt, an inner sense of consciousness. And it can lead to inappropriate behavior by us. It can often lead to violence, because we think that's how we might solve the challenge of how it is that we might feel about others or other experiences, or if somebody hurt us or did something to us, and our response might show up in the realm of violence. And the willingness to use violence is from an inner debt. It is from a feeling that we have that we have been declared less than, or we have been hurt, or we have been attacked, or something has happened that creates that feeling that we have to respond, that sense of wanting to retaliate, to seek revenge for what it is that has showed up in our life. If you have ever been hurt, I should ask, how many have never been hurt? If you've ever been hurt, you carry a debt. You likely carry a debt. If you've ever hurt another, you also carry a debt. And how many of us have never hurt another? I should ask it in a positive way, but I think it's important to understand this. And right now this is Black History Month, and in Black History Month I think about the work of Dr. Martin Luther King and what he did and how he represents the debt between the races, which is a debt that has existed for a long time in terms of our consciousness as a nation and even as a planet, and how he was able to adopt Gandhi's nonviolent process in terms of nonviolent protest, in terms of making a difference in how we viewed and changed how we react to dealing with the debt that we carry. And so he was able to move forward in their journey in terms of civil rights without creating more debt. You know what I'm saying? Without coming at the situation the way in which it had come at them. Because that's really the principle of nonviolence. We come at it more consciously, more thoughtfully, more clearly. And so he was able to change our perceptions and how we viewed that entire situation, and it resulted in the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is a major piece of legislation that did some damage to a lot of political people, in terms of that time because of their feelings about it. So the way in which we create or deal with the debt in our life requires some certain states of consciousness to exist within us to deal with it. And those states of consciousness are humility, forgiveness, and clarity. Humility, forgiveness, and clarity. Todd Michael in his book says, as it turns out, it is not impressive intelligence, it is not great metaphysical knowledge and verbal proficiency that is the doorway to the realm of the mysteries. It is not one's stature in the spiritual community. It is not a person's visible and impressive works. As it turns out, the bottleneck is humility, plain and simple. The willingness to be humble. The willingness to bring humility into our experience wherever it is whenever we've been hurt or whenever we've hurt another, is and we recognize that, to adopt that space of humility in our life. The woman came in and she wept. She was humble. She kneeled. She bowed to the Christ Spirit, which is really, that's the metaphysics of this particular parable, is that she was able to humble herself to her spiritual nature, to her spiritual self. And it was in that humbling that she received forgiveness for what it is that she had done, whatever that was. It doesn't say exactly what it is, but she received forgiveness. Humility is required of us in order to be forgiving. In order to forgive another, it takes humility, the willingness to step forward and say, I did something that I perhaps shouldn't have done. And in that humility, we're able to change the dynamics in which we are dealing with something. One of the ways in which we are able to access this experience of humility is the willingness to apologize for something that we've done. And an apology is really an act of humility. But here's the challenge, because the way we understand apology in our culture is different than the actual process of apology, because there's a step-by-step process to actually apologize, and apologize in a way that's real and that's true. And so oftentimes I find myself that when I'm confronted with something that I've done, that maybe I could not have done if I would have been thinking or in the right space, I get defensive. Do you ever have that experience? No, I'm sure none of you get defensive. So I tend to get defensive. I may not react defensively verbally, but I feel it, And so if I apologize in that moment, I apologize out of defensiveness, not out of humility. And so when we apologize out of defensiveness, what we do is we say, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Right? And that's projecting it back onto the person. It's saying, you're wrong. I'm sorry that you reacted that way. I'm sorry that it affected you that way, or something like that. And that's often what we do, and that's not an apology. That's a projection. But when we step back and we get centered, we realize that in order to really apologize, there's some things we have to do. And one is we have to own the act. So we first say, I apologize for, and then we have to name what it is that we did. Not what they were feeling, but what we did, what we said, that dynamic. And then we have to own it, and then we have to essentially create a, what's the word I'm looking for? What are we going to do to acknowledge that? In other words, it's not going to happen again, or I'm going to get some help, or this is what I'm going to do in order to follow up on the apology, in order to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Do you hear what I'm saying? So there's a process where we actually apologize. And so when we make that apology and we get to that place where we actually understand what the dynamic is and we can actually honestly apologize, then we receive forgiveness. Because we owned it. And that's a true apology. And those aren't the kind that are often given. And when we learn how to do that, we recognize that, it's not an intellectual thing, because what happens is when we actually show up with humility and we make a true apology, then we are humble. It's a humble experience, and we feel it. We know it's true. We know it's the truth, and we know it's real. And when we know that, then there is no violence. There's nonviolence. There's only peace. And there's only love, because that's how love shows up. So it's not just an automatic. It's something that comes from a place within us, and it changes the consciousness of the dynamic that we are in. So rather than be defensive, sometimes it's better to step back a little bit, and until we can reach a point where we actually understand that this action, even though we didn't intend it to be something that was hurtful, showed up that way. And so we can take responsibility for it and do something about it and own it. And so that's how forgiveness, that's how we set up the process of forgiveness in a way that allows other people to forgive us. And we can also help other people who we need to forgive, because that's the other side of the coin, is how do we forgive somebody that may not understand what it is that they're doing. And Jesus, when he was on the cross, gives us the perfect example, because he's up there in great pain and anguish, and he looks down and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. If they knew what they needed to do, they would not have done it. If they knew what they were doing. Do you hear that? That's how we get there. We recognize that this person wouldn't have done that if they knew what they were doing at all. They wouldn't do it. So I think it's important to recognize that. Todd Michael says that make no mistake about it. The ego is an incredibly cunning and resilient opponent, has a variety of extraordinarily potent and baffling mechanisms designed to foil all but the most intelligent and persistent of efforts to tame it. The good news is that you won't be up against an external opponent. In the final analysis, you will be found to be your own worst impediment. It will only be your own ego, your own denial, your own pride, and your own selfishness that will have the power to stop you. For these are the things that are necessary and non-negotiable to attain a state of true forgiveness. It's an internal experience, an internal process where we wipe out the debt that we are carrying on our shoulders, and we then live our life with an open heart. One of the most powerful moments of humility came to me back in 2003, and I was between churches. I had left the Seattle church, and I had not yet taken on the South Sound Church. And my daughter Caroline, she was 12, and she was playing soccer, and so she had a soccer tournament on Saturday, a 2-game tournament down in Federal Way, and that was we were living in Lake Forest Park, and Federal Way was quite a ways south. And so I was really looking forward. Saturday morning, looking forward to her soccer game, spending the day with my daughter, that whole dynamic. And so we get in the car and we drive down, and she played her first game, and they won the game. But we had a couple, 3 hours between games. And so we went to the movies. Took all the kids to the movies. And I remember the movie was Freaky Friday, right? That was the show. And so in the movie, they have this little thing, turn off your cell phone. So I turned my cell phone off at that time. And so we went back to the soccer field, and finally I turned my cell phone back on. I noticed that somebody had left me a message. So I clicked on it and listened, and the voice on the other end says, "Where are you? We are here for our wedding, and you're not here." And so one of the parents was standing next to me. I said, "Oh my gosh, I forgot to go to a wedding." And she looked at me like, "Well, so, And I said, "Problem is, I'm the officiant at the wedding." And I'm like, so immediately I called him, and called back the number, and somebody answered, and I told him who it was, and they were like, you could feel the icy, the whole kind of on the end of the phone, and they said, I said, "Well, it's going to take me an hour to get there." And they said, "Well, don't worry about being here for the wedding. There was a judge in the group that got up and performed the ceremony, but we need the license." And I had the license, and I said, "Okay, well, I'll be there." And so I hung up, and I got a ride for Carolina, and I jumped in the car, and I took off. And about an hour, it took an hour to go to my house and then out to Woodinville to the ceremony. And the whole way, unfortunately, I had that time, right? The whole way I kept thinking, I was trying to, what excuses. You know how you kind of go, what can I say? What excuse can I give? How can, And by the time I left there and I got to the wedding ceremony, I'd sort of come full circle. And I realized, this is completely my fault, and I need to take responsibility totally. And so I pulled up, and the groom came out. I guess they were watching for me. He came right out. So I had the license, and I said, I completely apologized. I said, I forgot. I was at a soccer game and I just forgot, and I'm sorry, and it's, I feel really bad, and so I wrote him a check for the amount that they'd paid me to do the ceremony, and I also wrote him another check to give to the judge, to pay the judge for having done the wedding, and it was really interesting that when I went through all that, I took some action, and I said, I'm happy to go in and apologize to the bride or to the wedding party, whatever you feel I should do. I'm happy to do that. And he said, the groom says, "Oh, no. He says, he says, I should have called you and reminded you. And he started taking responsibility for my not showing up. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, he completely shifted, And because I was willing to show up in humility and own the situation and apologize for it and write the checks and make an effort to correct it, it changed everything. And it was a real lesson to me in that moment of how important it is to own up to things and how you do things. And so there was no forgiveness that was really needed. It was handled right there. And he didn't want me to, he said, "No, you don't need to go in and talk to the bride." He said, "I'll take care of it, and I appreciate you getting this handled." And we left, and on the way home, I thought, just like, I felt clear. I still felt bad about missing it, certainly, but I felt clear of the energy field around which I had created by having missed it. And so it's an important reminder when we do those things, if we can stop, take note of ourselves, how we're feeling, what we're experiencing, what we're doing, what's going on in our experience, and then show up with a sense of humility, we open the door up for some incredible things to happen. And so we don't have to carry this load around with us. We don't have to spend the next year or 2 years feeling badly about something that we did that we were never able to correct or address or whatever is necessary. I think forgiveness is a process of humbling ourselves and owning up to what's going on in our experience and opening ourselves up to whatever blessing is there for us, just as the woman did, came in, she humbled herself to the spiritual side of her life and opened herself up. Even though she had apparently done many things wrong in her life, she was forgiven. She was lifted of the debt that she was carrying. And whatever happened to her, I don't know, obviously, but something good probably took place after that. So the formula is that he gives us is humility squared plus forgiveness equals peace, prosperity, and an open heart. God bless you, and thank you for being here today.
Love is my decision. It's up to me to give of my heart. Love is my decision. No one else can tell me to start. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision, right here and now. Love is my decision. It's up to me to stand on that bridge. Love is my decision. To make me forgive. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision, right here and now. Love is my decision.
Sing with us.
It's up to me to dance down that road. Love is my decision. No one else can lighten my load. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision, right here and now. Love is my decision. It's up to me to dance down that road. Love is my decision. No one else can lighten my load. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision, right here and now. My decision, right
Perfect. Thank you. That was great. You said it. Couldn't have said it better myself. Let's take our gifts in our hands as we move into our time of offering. And I want to acknowledge those who are watching online. And if you feel so moved to give a gift to our live streaming service, you can do so by texting a gift. And there's a text, should be a text number. Is there one? Yeah, it's a text number across the bottom, or there's one right here behind me. If you can see it right there. And we appreciate that. Thank you very much. And so we bless our gifts by just knowing that we are true instruments of God, and we give of our good, to that which is helping this planet become a better place. And so we give thanks for understanding that as we bless our gifts by singing our offering song.
And multiplies all that I am, all that I give, all that I receive. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I give, all that I receive. Christ in you, I see light pouring forth from you. I bless everything that you are. You are love, I see Christ in you, I see light pouring forth from you. I bless everything that you are. I see Christ in you, I see light pouring forth from you. I bless everything that you are. You are love, I see Christ in you, I see light pouring forth from you. I bless everything that you are. You are love, I see Christ in you, I see light pouring forth from you. I bless everything that you are. Sing it one more time, let's hear you. You are love, I see Christ in you, I see light pouring forth from you. I bless everything that you are.
Cha cha cha.
Let us pray. Father, Mother God, we acknowledge this offering as the very substance of your being, created for our use before the world was formed. We know it has been shaped and formed in our thoughts and in our hearts, and now comes into manifestation through our thoughts and our words, and enters this your ministry with your blessing upon it. According to your perfect law, it returns to each giver heaped up, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. For our increased understanding of this law, we do give thanks. Amen. And now let's welcome our children.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little
So here's our spokesman. He goes, woof, woof. So how are you guys today? Who's your spokesman today? You are, again? You know, we're going to have him give a sermon one of these days. You know. Okay, what would you like to tell us?
Sneak peek, peace, and pursue it.
Seek peace and pursue it. Is that right? All right, let's affirm that together. Seek peace and pursue it. Yes. What did you guys do today anyway?
We made Valentine's.
Oh, good.
Here.
Anybody else have any comments? Or? Okay, well, let's all stand as we join hands and sing Let There Be Peace on Earth. Prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever I am, God is, because I am. And all is well. Amen.
Daddy took the T-bird away. Ow. Fun, fun, fun. Daddy took the T-bird away.